Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the Mission Nutrition Devlog. If you're new here, you should go watch the first 2 episodes. Let's get right into things again. This week I ended up working only on art, but I think I did a decent bit of work. When I piled on the tasks, I didn't realize that some of them would literally take me hours to finish. This week we are playing Payday 2, and you can skip ahead if you'd like, because we have timestamps now. After hundreds of hours and dozens of burnouts, I feel like coming back to this game, which I do pretty often when it comes to some of my favorites. Most AAA games are really mediocre nowadays, and paying full price for something I'm gonna spend 10 hours playing is simply a scam to me. And a great example of this would be Payday 3 actually. I'm very new to high-end gaming as I only built my PC half a year ago, and I have only done low spec and console gaming for all of my life. Unfortunately, Payday 3 was the game I anticipated the most, and it was utterly disappointing in almost every way. From the unplayable servers for literally weeks after launch, to the lack of content, the horrible leveling and skill systems, I can confidently say that it was probably the worst €40 I've ever spent in my life. Since then, I've played other new games, and while some of them were really good, it has been a very mediocre experience in general, so I have all the more reason to return to the classics. Payday 2 hardly ever lets me down, aside from the awful optimization and the occasionally tragic servers, and the game loop is endlessly fun and satisfying, and there are more builds and playstyles in this game than I can count. So anyways, back to our game. As I was saying, I couldn't finish some tasks this week, all of which were animation, so this episode is gonna focus on art again. The first thing I knocked out of the way was the remaining 2 mobs. This is the first one, and I really love this guy. Don't mind the initial noodle design, by the way, I have no idea where I was going with this one. He'll be a ranged enemy who's gonna walk around far away from you and shoot projectiles into the air, which are gonna fall down and do damage in a large AoE around you. The way I designed him is that I really liked what I did with the crawly guy, so I wanted to continue the biological theme. All of the enemies in this level have evolved the defense mechanisms by incorporating the terrain around them. This planet, which doesn't have a name yet, has many deep craters as you can see, and when the tectonic plates move, the tunnels that connect these craters can build up pressure, which makes them launch rocks into the air. This is where evolution comes in. This species often squeezes through the tunnels, collecting rocks and debris during the process, and once the cannon hole is full, it then crushes and compacts the material to form a projectile, which it then uses as a defensive tool. The way it does this is it sucks in air through the cavity at the bottom, which builds up an incredible amount of pressure in a similar manner to the craters. And in order to not decimate itself when it shoots, it has hardened the lower part of his body, similarly to the crawly guy, in order to dissipate the shock. So he shoots a projectile with no hitbox straight upwards, which is gonna leave your camera, and very soon there will be an AoE zone around you.
This nigga really think he's Bruce Lee. Yo, get this shit.
Overall, I'm really proud of my design on this one. For the second mob, which I realized looks very mediocre compared to the first one while reading the script, I wanted even more bullets to fly around the arena, so I made another ranged enemy. I can't think of a cool explanation for this one yet, but it's gonna shoot 4 bullets, which are always horizontal and vertical based on its position, and it will try to move fairly close to you. It also has these little ball sacks on the bottom because I wanted to deviate from using the other legs I made so far. The next thing I made was the background for the map. This was by far the longest task because I decided to make it on a 600 by 500 canvas, and I do have a time lapse for you for this piece, by the way. I decided not to make one from the other ones because I keep switching my YouTube videos and texting people while I work, and it's really annoying to edit all of that out. Sprite is a great piece of software, but I wish it had the same time-lapse function that Clip Studio Paint has. Anyways, I made a space background with a rift in the middle accompanied by some stars. This was my first time working on something this big, and I really like how it turned out. And the hours I put into it have paid off because this piece can double up as the art for the main menu when I add a couple of planets and some animation. And if I polish this up, I can also include it in my portfolio, so that's 3 birds with 1 stone. Next thing on the list was the player UI. I didn't give this much thought when planning, but I decided that I'll include a way to heal yourself, since this game is supposed to be fairly difficult. While working, I've been giving some thought to the difficulty of the game, and I really like the idea that you'll play a mini-game every time you choose a mission. Unfortunately, we don't have time for that in this version, obviously, but I'll definitely be implementing this later. And you'll be able to collide with the planet, which is going to display the NPCs associated with the planet, and some additional info like the difficulty of the level, for example. Then you'll have the option of either continuing your flight or engaging in that mission. So different planets are definitely gonna have different difficulty levels, and I want this starter one to be on the easier side of the spectrum. We can even consider making a shield system in the future that's gonna generate after not taking damage for some time, like in Soul Knight. But back to the UI. I really enjoy a unique UI in gaming, so I try to heavily stylize mine. Since you're mechanical, your blood is displayed in this glass tank with some pumps and cables attached. You'll always have 6 health, and I don't plan to make this upgradable, as this way it will be much easier to balance enemy attacks based on both the difficulty of the level and how easy the attack is to anticipate. And right under your health is the extra blood, which acts like a flask that restores your entire health bar. This will always have 2 charges, and there is no way to refill this during the run. Before we get into the final things, let's have a small rant again. In the last episode, I told you about some of my design process, but I completely forgot to talk about art style. This is my preview from Fiverr, by the way, which is entirely comprised of my oldest work, and I should probably update it soon, because it's incredibly outdated and doesn't reflect my current skills anymore. No wonder I haven't gotten a single order in like 2 years. You can also spot many mobs from my first game, Shady Dungeon, here. When I was starting out, my art was incredibly inconsistent in general, and the number of shades, the colors, and the overall quality just doesn't match up on some of these. Since I started, I've always been leaning towards using more shades and therefore more detail, and this is something I still do now, as that's simply a part of my art style, but I feel like I've improved on my usage quite a bit. Another thing I got better at is the colors that I use. I've been sticking to the Gora 63 palette for quite a while now, but more importantly, I've learned how to pick off palette colors and to make more shades when I need them, which improved my art drastically. Another thing you can notice is the use of my outlines. I've always been a fan of outlines, but again, many improvements were made. At first I only used pure black, and later I started introducing some color. Initially, I gave everything a slight touch of blue, but then I shifted the hue to whatever the most prominent color in the asset was. Currently, I still hue shift the outline, but now it's based on which color it's touching. I also started shading my outlines, and I found 3 shades to be really effective. The shading was by far the best change over the years, and I think it really elevated my art. And just to be clear, I don't think using only black outlines is wrong at all or anything, I just think giving them some color and shading is much more pleasant to look at. Now, finally, the thing I've been most excited to show you this week, the boss of this level. And I absolutely love how this guy came out. The initial idea was to make some sort of a hive with many cavities, but I'm glad I scrapped that idea, because this guy has presence. And here's the design process. The idea was that I wanted to implement some parts from the other mobs and make a sort of perfect specimen type creature. Maybe this guy was the only one from his species that survived the harsh natural selection and kept evolving into what he is now. It also seems he's highly intelligent, as he's able to communicate with humans, hence the humanoid head and cavity. This entire genus seems to be following a simple 2-step hierarchy, with him at the top and everyone else at the bottom. And because of this biological superiority, he was also able to migrate and colonize in the first place. He's also intelligent enough to be capable of symbiosis but also trickery, as in the lore of episode 1, I mentioned that you previously cooperated with this species before finding out about how they conduct business with others. Now, although I scrapped the hive design, I still wanted to implement many holes that could make for interesting attacks, and I already thought of 3 of them. Starting with the most complex one, I want him to snap into a certain position and make him do a half circle around you, shooting 4 big bullets, 1 for each shoulder cannon. These 4 bullets are gonna split into many regular ones like a shotgun, and yes, this is gonna be absolute pain in the ass to code, most likely, but if it ends up being way too hard, I'll just skip the attack for now. The second attack will focus on your quick reflexes and positioning, so from his back cannon, he's gonna shoot a sort of turbocharged bullet, which I also drew, I forgot to mention that. And it goes into the air out of your vision, the same way the cannon mob shoots, but instead of an AoE it will create a falling barrage. For now, I'm not sure if this will only be your vicinity or maybe even a map-wide attack, but we're gonna figure that out later. And the third one is very simple. As you can see, I covered his lower half with the rocks again, and the way he uses this is he slams into the ground and creates a linear shockwave going into your direction. So that's what we got for the boss for now, but I want him to have at least 4 attacks, so we'll make one more. Probably a bunch of regular bullets, as I want to put more chaos into the fight since the other 3 attacks aren't way too hard to dodge. But again, I'm incredibly happy with how this guy turned out, and it's by far my favorite thing I've done in this project so far. And one final thing we did for the week is make a health bar for this absolute unit. Pretty simple, not too much to say here. I went with the outline portray, and as I'm writing the script, I just realized that I forgot to hue shift the outline for the HP, so I'm gonna go fix that real quick. As for the next week, we're gonna take a break from doing only art, and instead we'll focus on animation, and very exciting, we are going to get started with Godot, which I'm not sure if I mentioned yet, that is my engine of choice for this game, so hopefully it's not as bad as I expect it to be, and we finally start putting the game together into something playable. Here's the plan for the next week. I'm keeping the tasks we haven't been able to finish this week, and I'm adding the UI animations, which includes the health bar and a little indicator spark that signals your dash being ready. This time I don't make any promises, as I have no idea if I'll be able to make an original attack and walk animation for all 4 mobs and a bunch more. I've also introduced a new color to the planner, being blue, and this is for the tasks that are low priority, so I don't need to worry about them too much. Again, thank you very much for watching this video. I'd really appreciate it if you left a like, comment and subscribe, as that would definitely motivate me very hard. And thank you very much for watching, and see you hopefully next week.